In this product review, I'm going to look at the Green Stuff World texture rollers. So these are little cylinders that you can use to put a pattern on whatever surface you're working with. In this case, I am going to be looking at my Blood Bowl team. I've got some dwarfs and I've got a dwarven texture. So what we're going to do is we're going to try put down a nice simple base on them and work with that. Now, I learned everything I needed to know about using these from Dana Howl, so it's definitely worth checking out her video. The key tips are to use brown stuff as your putty material and keep everything damp with water with talcum powder mixed in. This stops things sticking. So normally I'll have the surface and I'll have the roller at least damp with it. First thing we're going to do is we're going to roll out a bit of a pancake. Try get it nice and flat using the plain roller. You don't necessarily have to buy the one from GSW, but it's handy to have. Okay, now we're starting into a texture. As you can see, the top, this did stick a little bit, but I just pick at it and then just keep rolling. It doesn't have to be perfect all the way through, because what we're going to be doing, and you can see this on the left hand side, you see there's kind of bits that didn't quite work. Well, we're going to be cherry picking the nice parts of the texture for this when we break out our little circular cutters. Now you can see I've got two here. The bases I'm adding these to are going to be 32mm bases for Blood Bowl. However, the top of the base is actually smaller than 32. So we're going to be using the slightly smaller one. I think it's a 30mm. The GSW kit has multiple ones, so you're covered for it. And here you can see I've cut out 3 circles. I've got a bit left. What I'll do is I'll scrunch that up. I'll take another bit of brown stuff, combine it all together, and we'll keep on working. Now, when you're removing them, it's okay to tear outside the circle, but you want to avoid any distortions or damage to the inside. You can see here that I've got a little silicone shaper that I'm using. And in this case, when I lifted up this circle, the material came with it. So I'm actually going to have to press it down using the silicone shaper to make sure I don't leave any fingerprints. And here there was a bit left over, so I did a little bit of a Necron piece that I used on some later models. Okay, and here's a different way of doing it. So for the Blood Bowl, I'm using toppers, just cutting out circles, but you can do a little bit of blotches here and cover it up with other basic material. See that little dot in there? After you finish using the texture tools, go through them and make sure you don't have any material still stuck in it. You want to get them now while they're still wet to avoid something drying and getting stuck and basically ruining the texture. Back to the dwarfs. Now you can see these are Slotta bases, which causes a potential problem. Pushing the Slotta down wouldn't work. You'd end up with this little section in the middle or at the sides where it's just Slotta base. So what we're going to do is we're going to do little slits, do little cuts in it, chop it down, and then we're going to push those in. So you can see I've marked 2 little holes in there. That gives me a rough outline of where the Slotta is. And I'm going to take this dwarf and see his bases have been sharpened to 2 tabs, and we're just going to carefully push it down. So you can see we're pushing the brown stuff into the Slotta, and we're hopefully getting very little disruption around it. It can happen that you end up with a little bit that has kind of sunk down. It's obvious. Often it depends on what the model is like. You might need to go back with some textured base or something like that. And here I'm using a silicone shaper to press the top down. I didn't glue them. I normally don't glue them. They normally adhere fine, but you certainly could glue them in if you wanted that extra little bit of security. Okay, now this guy has been left overnight, and I'm just trimming around. In Dana's video, she suggested 3 to 5 hours as a kind of good drying time. The brown stuff's actually quite nice to work with. I'm not really getting much traction there, but that's more because I'm not getting a good section. But it cuts quite well while still retaining its kind of shape. And yeah, I'm just putting a couple of the magnetic bases on here at this point, and I'll go back in and I'll trim them again just to get kind of a nice even coverage. Now, you can see I'm not being particularly great with my knife control here. Obviously, when you're using these things, you should be super careful. But I'm just trying to get a nice round base. Here we are. So this is them just painted black, just get a bit of an undercoat on. Then I'll go in and I'll paint toppers grey. Now, you don't necessarily, you can see I did the very top of the rim in grey just so you can see the topper. You don't necessarily have to do that. If you get a good even divide, you could do that all black. And then we're just going to go back in and do a bit of an ink wash and a bit of a highlight, or a bit of a dry brush. So, I mean, nice and simple, looks great on the table. I've been really impressed since I've started using these. I've started using these for all of my models. Now, I do have a Space Marine army that uses some resin bases that I get from a company. It's a little frustrating that anytime I need to get new ones, I have to order. For my Necron army instead, I've got a different route. I have the texture roller for the Necrons, and I'm really enjoying making some custom ones that have this kind of unifying texture that kind of regularly appears across them. But I'm not stuck to one or two, types of base. I can kind of get creative. I can do a lot of different things with it, and so much so that I've picked up several of these rollers since I've started. And I've really enjoyed them. So this is my preference for making bases these days. Given the chance, I will use these textured rollers to add a little bit of character, a little bit of flair, and go from that. Well, hope you enjoyed this video. I haven't seen anyone else talking about the Slotta bases, which certainly have been a problem for me, but this was a solution I found. And if you're on the fence, I heartily recommend them. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and comment.